Well, they say Red Bull gives you wings. Sadly for Checo, he needed a parachute after frolicking with the Ferrari at Turn 1 in Mexico. Welcome back to Grid Talk. My name is Tom Downey, and joining me today we have Mathew from the Grip Strip podcast.
Hello.
Rachel Kapusta, I think I said that right, from the from the Paddock Pals podcast.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, we have Jonah back again, who is our resident media mogul.
Good evening.
Good evening. Sorry, Jonah. Wasn't quite sure what to introduce you as then. But just before we carry on with this episode, we must thank our sponsor, as always, Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Please remember to use the promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Also, please do be sure to follow our socials at GridTalk UK to stay up to date with the show. So now that the housekeeping is out of the way, and yes, we will get to the incidents in question, which I'm sure most people are going to want to hear about. We do need to obviously talk about the rest of the field because there was more to this than Perez getting yeeted by himself at turn 1. So Jonah has a bit of obviously a mixed day at the office for them. Hulkenberg ultimately finished P13. He was holding on to P10 for so long, but ultimately the tyres gave up on him. And Kevin Magnussen triggered the red flag on lap 31 after suffering quite a frightening accident and looked in a bit of discomfort when he got out of the car. Just to say, from what we've heard, K-Mag is okay. So, whilst he is a bit battered and bruised, he does appear to be okay. And obviously, best wishes from all of us. He gets better. But Haas, they've slipped behind AlphaTauri in the standings because we'll get onto them in a bit. But they're now rock bottom, and after these regulation changes promise so much, it's another weekend of what ifs and what could have beens.
Yeah, I mean, Hulkenberg being the third last qualified finisher at this race, and obviously we know how Magnussen ended it in a Tech Pro. It's just I'm not going to say it's underwhelming because it's Haas at the end of the day. It's a real shame. Hulkenberg looked really good holding on to that P10. You don't hear people say this often, but the Alpines were just faster. You really don't hear people say that very frequently, but his tires gave out. It was a combination of a few different things that led to him slipping down into 13th. That's a lot of money. A lot of money Haas just lost out on if they continue this form for the remaining 3 races of the year. Thank God that Kevin Magnussen's okay. It was a real heavy accident into that Tech Bro through, if I'm not mistaken, it was turn 13 or something in through the S section. It sucks. I mean, it really does suck. I want to see those guys do better. I don't know if it was fully Magnussen's fault. I mean, from what I saw, maybe he damaged some part of the suspension going over after he shot it a little too deep into the corner. It was actually one of the parts of the race I walked away from, not the accident, but the missed overtake. But you can see a suspension just completely snapped on the rear left, which is just, I mean, he's a passenger at that point. Real shame for him. Not exactly like he was running in a phenomenal position, but his teammate was. Unfortunate, but not to say it's unexpected. Haas has just been performing very poorly, and they lost out on a lot of money today.
Absolutely, it was a you made a very good point. You made a very good point about the points. It's not just that they've lost standings. It's the financial implications. Although in this new cost cap era, it does mean they'll have more, I believe, wind tunnel and CFD time. Should they, I say, hold on to P10 in the constructors. Not like they can go any further, is it? Unless someone's sort of like summons mana from the dead or something. I don't know. But you can tell I'm not good at hosting this late at night. Rach, next we're going to have a quick chat about Alpine. So I think the best way to sum up their performance is, oh yeah, they were there. Because I said in the live chat on Slack that because it showed, I believe it was Pierre Gasly having a great battle with Valtteri Bottas, actually. going through, through sort of turn 1, 3, turns 1, 2, 3, that whole like slinky section. Very technical phrase, I know. It showed, I believe it was Gasly defending really well, and that was the first I recalled seeing them in the race. Ultimately, they finished P10 and 11. Ocon got a point after basically saying to Hulkenberg, 1v1 me, bro. And he ultimately won. There's a gaming reference for anybody who's listening. Please don't shout me on S&D. I will win. And it's and it was I mean it's a good weekend for Alpine, you could maybe say, because they brought both cars home. They've got a point. Their reliability seems to be okay. He says I'll watch them go bang the next few weekends in a row. But do you think they could have got more from this, or do you think, given everything that happened around them, this is maybe the best they could have asked for?
I definitely think it's the best that they could have asked for. I did see a scenario, even though they were definitely faster, where like Hulkenberg could somehow hold them off with his straight line speed. So I think that it's really good that they did get a point today. Totally agree with you. They were super anonymous, and it was just like, where are they? What are they doing? So I agree with you there. I always feel like Alpine, like going into the weekend, no one ever says like, oh, this is going to be a good track for them. Like, I don't really know what a good track for them is or what a bad track for them is. They're just middle of the road through and through. And I just feel like we've seen that all season long. And you kind of wish that they could do better. I don't know. At the beginning of the season, for some reason, I was on an Alpine train, and I don't know why, and I don't know how I got there, and I didn't know how to get off for a while. But yeah, so I think this was expected for them today. It's good that they both finished. And I think that we'll pretty much see this for the rest of the season from them right around here.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like you said. It's a very much Alpine result, sort of like, sort of quite solid and not particularly spectacular. And there's Carl King, one of our fellow panelists and co-host of Monkey Podcast, said they just seem to have celebrity endorsements and investments at the minute, and that's about it. So yeah, there's not too much we can say about them, sadly. At least they're not getting 5-second penalties every 5 seconds. Like they were at the start of the season. But Phil, this one should be good. Aston Martin, they ended with a double DNF ultimately. After a particularly stellar qualifying for both cars. There's definitely not any sarcasm in that at all. They started, oh God, where did they start? I think they started like, I don't even know. I think Alonso was P13 and Stroll started from the pit lane because he'd qualified P18 or P19. To be honest with Stroll, I get his starting position modelled up with his race car number because they're usually the same. And I'm not wrong there, to be fair. Alonso, he DNF'd on lap 47. We don't really know why. He was told to bring the car in, probably for the best. And then Stroll DNF'd on lap 66, which, to be fair, was not his fault, certainly in my view. Bottas thought he was still in a Mercedes for some reason and then just tried to absolutely assassinate Stroll in the stadium section. But, I mean, given where Aston Martin were at the start of the season, Phil, it's pretty dismal. And if you don't like Aston Martin, you could say it's a little bit funny, couldn't you?
Yeah, it's the karma train catching up to them, Tom. When you consider the owner and one of their drivers, and probably for all the bad juju that Fred brings to the table with all his history, for even though he's one of the greatest drivers ever, you have to go and add that in there. Fernando Alonso, 2-time world champion. He's one of the best drivers we've ever seen. Yeah, but do you see his track record outside of those 2 world championships? Did have nothing to do with Fred today. It was a really typical recently with issues with the car. They didn't have any pace all weekend, and then the race didn't go very well. Overheating was a problem for virtually everybody, but I think it really affected the Aston Martin team. Stroll probably was going to get a penalty because he was making more moves. He had Pruitt fades and other moves. He was trying to do some sort of dance with his car. instead of actually trying to hold off somebody. He'll probably blame the fact that he couldn't see in his mirrors, but instead, by the end, and he went for a pass in that stadium, in the Mickey Mouse Stadium section, and that cost. That ended up with Valtteri Bottas being on the inside of him, and he yeeted him out of the race. So, yeah, it's amazing that at the start of the season, Aston Martin was the second best team on the grid. And there's 3 races to go, and there's an argument to be made that they're now maybe the 7th or 8th best team on the grid, which is ridiculous. I've never seen that before. I don't, and I've watched Formula One for a long time. I've never seen a team have a epic drop from the front of the grid to absolute nowhere. And then and then they're going to lose time and money and all that stuff within the Constructors' Championship because of where they were, and because of all the points they earned early in the year. So curious to see how this will all work out in the long run for them. But this end of the season can't come soon enough for the team that once was Jordan.
Yeah, they've been just a couple of teams through the years. I mean, I say bring back Midland F1 because at least Midland F1 led a lap or led a race, which I don't even know if Aston Martin have done this year. I could be wrong on that, but I'm racking my brain. I can't, as we think back to the start of the season, I'm not, or maybe Saudi, but who cares? Moving on. God, I really did wake up and choose violence today. Moving on from that, Jonah, let's just cycle back around. So, AlphaTauri. Now, obviously, we talked about Haas, who have moved down to P10, and it is indeed AlphaTauri who have moved up to P9, much at the expense of Haas, which, lol, that's basically my feelings on that. That was all thanks to Mr. Daniel Ricciardo, who started P4 in an AlphaTauri and finished P7, and he was ultimately, I think, about 4/10 behind George Russell, and was chasing him down for a potential P6 finish in a car that at the time was categorically the worst on the grid. Well, you say that because they're bottom of the constructors, but he is coming to F1 after being dumped by McLaren, because let's face it, he didn't perform. I was very skeptical of him coming back, and I stand corrected, because he has done bits in that car today which none of us were going to expect. And also his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Now, if people, obviously people watch this past haven't seen the race, they might think, oh well, you're down at P7, that's incredible, but why is Yuki's P12? Yuki was P8. And he was, or maybe P9. He was in the lower half of the points, or the bottom third of the points, and he made quite a clumsy, certainly in my view, quite a clumsy attempted move on Oscar Piastri. So AlphaTauri obviously moved up to P9, and I believe they're tied with Alfa Romeo as well, who are in P8, who I think might stay P8 based on the virtue that they've had a higher race result. I will need to double check that. I'm only going off what Brundle said on commentary, but given how their season started, and given that they've had 4 drivers this season, it's a pretty impressive turnaround, you have to say. And do you think today perhaps sort of like showed the progress they've made in what is the most upgraded car this season, I should add?
You know what? I don't think it showed the progress that they've made. I think that you get to a circuit that's very, very, very high in elevation, super thin air, very low drag, and very little downforce. When you take away all the aspects of a good race car, AlphaTauri had a good race car. At the end of the day, there was nothing really at any other track. I mean, we'll see at Interlagos if I'm wrong. I'll die on this hill if I'm wrong. That's fine. But every other track that has required a little bit of downforce and a little bit of, having a slippery car on the straights, the AlphaTauri has been horrendous. when you get to a track where the air is so thin and they're running Monaco-sized wings and making less than Monza levels of downforce, this car is wicked fast. At the end of the day, I think that they kind of lucked out on their package. I think that, AlphaTauri had a good race car because all the things that make a good race car didn't apply here. Now, obviously, they have a really, 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 really talented driver in Daniel Ricciardo. I might be a diehard McLaren fan, but I'm not going to deny the guy's got talent. He's a proven race winner. He's a fantastic driver. Once again, as a McLaren fan, that was a pretty stupid move from Yuki. He's better than that. He can make that move. If he did it right, he would have been ahead of Oscar, in my opinion. But I don't think that that's a good race car, and I don't think it's shown the progress. I just think that it's poor. I just think it's a good combination for them. It's a good track for them because everything that makes a good race car is not there. So I think AlphaTauri got really lucky, and Daniel Ricciardo drove the crap out of it and managing to hold on to points. And once again, I'll go back to what I said about what I said the first time. It's a $20 million result potentially here, and if we go back and let's say it stays this way and neither AlphaTauri or Alfa Romeo score any more points for the rest of the year, AlphaTauri is going to finish ahead of them on countback for a higher finishing position. So, I don't fully think it's a good race car. I really don't. I just think that, when you have no downforce and no drag and your car's really fast in a straight line, then you're going to do well.
Yeah, who'd have thought it, with that massive straight and not that much drag with that Honda Red Bull Ford power unit powered by Honda Red Bull Ford, that they would have a lot of speed. Yeah, because we still don't know what they're quite called yet. But just looking a little bit further around the grid, Williams. So it was a bit of an odd weekend for them, but today, I say today, it is still today, just here. Thank heavens the clock went back, I'll say that. Williams ultimately, Albon finished P9 after starting P14, I believe he was. And then Logan Sargent, he DNF'd on the last one lap, I believe, with a potential fuel pump issue. And he was having a bit of a ding dong with Stroll. And I just want to allude to something quickly that Phil said when he talked about Aston Martin, was that when Stroll was weaving just a little bit on the straights, that definitely hampered Logan's performance. But Albon, again, another strong P9. It seems to be like his position when he scores points. He's in P9. So once again, good result. They're sort of securing that P7 in the constructors. Do you think the sort of race today shows that they've sort of got to a point where perhaps they're focusing a bit on next year because they're not too worried about people behind them, but they know they're not going to catch those in front of them as well?
I think so, but they definitely are driving with only one driver who's going to be reliable for those points. So I don't know. But again, Alex, he had a really good weekend until qualification and a really good race today. He had some nice overtakes and he just did a really nice job. I think James is doing a great job with the team as well. Last week I was at the race and I actually got to hear him talk. And he was talking about how Logan's seat is not guaranteed, and it's really going to be based on a meritocracy, is what he called it. So based on how Logan does. And I don't think today really helped Logan out for that. The only time he even got any broadcast coverage is when he was screaming on the radio, and they thought that'd be a good radio message to put out there. But he really didn't show anything today. He showed his immaturity and his drive, and it definitely didn't help him. Last weekend, maybe a little step forward, but I think this weekend, not so much. Williams definitely has one driver who they can rely on to get points, and another driver who is teetering on the edge, but who do you even replace him with? I mean, there's a handful of other unknown options, not really anyone solid. So I think he'll stay in the seat for next year, but his performance today definitely wouldn't help that.
No, that's a pretty damning but pretty accurate analysis. I suppose one could say. At least he kept it out of the barriers. Every cloud and all that. And to be fair, he's kept it out of the barriers for the last 2 weeks straight. So you got to take these little wins when they come about. But Phil, Alfa Romeo. Sorry, I seem to be giving you all the fun ones at the minute. even after I tried to avoid that. Alfa Romeo, they came home a dizzying 14th and 15th after qualifying P9 and P10, and I'm just gonna flat out say it, in a race where they qualified there, giving everything that happened around them, that's not really good enough. That wouldn't be good enough if there were 20 finishers and they finished there, but they were the last of the runners to finish, which, to be honest, is just a bit embarrassing. So we said yesterday, waiting for the Audi money. I think today, the Audi money might be on pause after that. How do you rate them today? Well, I say take rate with a pinch of salt, because I don't think this is going to be particularly positive.
Yeah, their rating is not very high. They would probably get those, like, when you think of the marks that you would get when they write the notes on the side on your report card, and you'd say, there was potential there at some point, but then Valtteri went and ran into someone, and then Joe disappeared. He has a habit of disappearing in the room, and we have to stop class because he disappeared. That's kind of what Alfa Romeo Sauber, whatever you want to call him, is. And that's what happened to them today. You start 9th and 10th. Valtteri, it's one of his better racetracks, and his day was just completely unfortunate. I mean, outside of Fred, it's probably the one person's day that probably didn't want to have it. I mean, Joe, I don't know what their plan was. I always think of Haas as being that one that goes in the tank, and to be fair, they did, but it also, it was Kevin Magnussen almost eating it, and that was not great. The Alpha Saubers, they brought some upgrades, and it looked good last week, or they've had their moments here and there, but it's been a whole bunch of nothing. And it's been a whole bunch of nothing for, I think, a decade or so. I think Sergio Perez was still driving for them the last time they were relevant. And Sergio Perez is about to be out of Formula One. So that tells you where things are at for them. And, you can keep on, we can all wait for the Audi money, but that's 2026. So it ain't going to help Valtteri. It ain't going to help Joe or whoever the heck they have working there. And they're not going to be relevant, but at least they have the solace that Haas is also going to stink with them. So at least the Ferrari customer teams can be together and be in the back.
Well, that was quite the 5-star. I wouldn't even call that an endorsement. That was the opposite of an endorsement from you there, Phil. And just speaking of 5 stars, if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we'd be most appreciative. I'm still not as good as Ruby when it comes to those transitions, but she is, after all, Ruby, the professional heist. She's not. She's the professional host. Oh my god, that's going to get clipped. That is even by my standards, that one was good. Ruby, I'm so sorry, mate. But yes, I can't even find the script. It's all gone wrong. Oh my word! I'm sorry, everyone. It's bedtime here, okay? And I don't do well at night. This is why I shouldn't be left alone for too long. Who have we got left now? We just talked about Alfa Romeo, didn't we? Yeah, because we talked about heists and all sorts. Jonah, McLaren. Let's try to get this back on track before something even worse comes out of my mouth. McLaren now. What a day. What a day. So, Lando started P17, finished P5. P5! 3 stopped and just went, nah, hold my Google Chrome device, and then just sailed his way through, started on the softs as well, and pitted for them quite early. I did fear for him at that point, but, the red flag definitely helped. And then Piastri was absolutely putting in moves. We will take the Yuki bit out of it because we'll talk about that afterwards. But Piastri, he put in a sensational move. I think it was on George Russell through turn 1 and 2. But McLaren, baby, they're They are here to stay.
Oh man, are they here to stay? What a like. It's fantastic. I'll talk about Oscar first. The guy's nuts. I mean, come on, he's a rookie. Like what? It's awesome to see. It's great to know that Alpine doesn't have him. I love it. And you know what? He's doing great. I think he's still in that phase where he feels like he has to prove himself, even though he has a contract extension or sprint win, a podium. Like, come on, man. No, you don't. But yeah, Oscar's been great. I'll stop with that. Oh my God, Lando Norris! The guy was driving. I mean, Crofty said it. Or Brundle said it. He's driving like a man possessed. That's absurd. Absolutely absurd. You're in a car that at the beginning of the season, you couldn't make it out of Q1. You were starting like 20th and 6th and 17th or whatever it was. It was atrocious. The car sucked. It looked worse than anything else on the grid. And you just went from 17th to 5th. And you did it at one of the harder circuits to overtake due to the lack of DRS effectiveness. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. What a phenomenal drive. The guy is unreal. If they don't sign him through 2038, I'm going to be ridiculously mad. He's, in my opinion, I think there's only one driver on the grid that's better than Lando Norris, and it's Max Verstappen. Right now, in form, that's it. The only guy who's better is Max Verstappen because that guy's unbelievable. Lando Norris today showed everybody how McLaren is back, why he deserves to get paid. Unreal. Unbelievable. He was phenomenal. McLaren's here to stay. I'm going to rub it in all my friends' faces. It's great. I love everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him wax lyrical about McLaren all day. But we do have other drivers to talk about as well. But yes, I am for one. I know we talk about it a lot, but it's good because McLaren, unless you're a Ferrari fan, McLaren is basically everybody's second team. And let's be fair, we want to see them. But I mean, Jonah, I'm getting the feeling they might be your first team. Never mind the second.
Right.
Yes, yeah, could be right, yeah. But yeah, no, it's it was just a good day at the office, wasn't it? Once again, especially after yesterday. But Rachel, oh boy, Red Bull. So Max has taken his record 16th win of a season, and that's Grand Prix victories. We're not counting the sprints in that. And we still have, I believe, 3 races to go because we have Brazil next week. We have a week off, then we have the Upside Down Pig, and then we have Abu Dhabi. So for those of you who aren't sure what I'm talking, the Upside Down Pig is Las Vegas. Because if you look at it, it looks like an upside down pig. And you will never be able to unsee that. So you're welcome. So Red Bull, I mean, Max, just covering him off very quickly. Started P3, was P1 by the time they got to about 200 meters down the straight, heading towards turn 1. And then something happened to him, and we'll get into it now. And then he was controlling the race, nailed the red flag standing start, and then just didn't look back. Checked out on the hards, and he was away with the fairies. I mean, you can add something to that if you want, but there's not much to add, is there? But Perez, and I'm going to want everybody's input on this one. So Rich, we'll start with you. We'll talk about the incident. So they're approaching. I say they. So we have Perez on the outside. We have Max on the far right hand side, and then we have Leclerc in the middle. And Perez has seen a gap that's opened up on the left, which is where Max went in 2021, and both Red Bull drivers got an insane launch, by the way. They both, Perez had a really good reaction time. He had a better reaction time than Max. He had a brilliant start. He was right there. He was in that place, and I certainly feel he had every right to go for it. Unfortunately, it's quite a tight turn into turn 1. 3 into 1, especially at that corner, doesn't go. And Leclerc brakes and had every right to brake where he did. Made contact with the rear of Perez's car, and then Perez's car just went, ooh, piece of candy, and then tried to put its face into the tarmac. And by that point, there was a gaping hole in the side pod. The rear wing was wobbling like the Alpine one. That's apparently legal. And then the floor was apparently pretty badly damaged as well. Ultimately, he DNF'd at his home race. What do you think? So, Rachel, I'll go to you first. What do you think about that lap 1 incident?
I think it's just a really, really unfortunate racing incident. It's hard to say Perez shouldn't have gone for it because he should have gone for it. And if he didn't, he'd be so mad at himself for not going for it. So I definitely think he should have gone for it. And I mean, unless maybe he was a little bit more on the outside, maybe he could have made it stick, but it was just really unfortunate, and you could tell it weighed on him a lot. He not only had the weight of his home crowd and wanting to make them proud, he has the weight of his contract. I mean, he has one for next year, of course, but they'll take it away if they want to. That's Red Bull. They're really cutthroat. So I think he had a ton of pressure and went for the move, and it was really unfortunate that it didn't stick. There was like a second where my brain flipped it and I was like, it's Max, he's off. He's not going to win this race. But no, it was 100% Checo. And it was really hard to watch. I know we saw like Christian consoling him. But what does that mean? That's like a spider consoling you. But he really wanted to get back out there. They tried to make the repairs in the car, but no, that was never going to happen. And it was, yeah, I guess it was just a really unfortunate racing incident. It was kind of weird that like the crowd left. I mean, it kind of shows that they're just Checo fans and not really F1 fans, I guess. And if he's not racing in F1 next year, I think that the Mexico City Grand Prix is going to see a big downturn in ticket sales and stuff like that. If that's really why people are going. So I guess that's a very, very long way to say it was a very unfortunate racing incident.
Yeah, I personally, I feel it was a racing incident as well. I don't think you can apportion blame at anybody there. And I think Perez certainly covered it off quite nicely in his interview with Rachel Brooks, which is a very passionate but also a very level-headed one. Phil, I'll come to you very quickly. I'm just going to say to you, racing incident or is there a driver at blame?
Yeah, I think it was a racing incident. It's just unfortunate considering what Checo's been through, or be self-inflicted or otherwise in his home Grand Prix, has a strong enough qualifying run, probably gets the best start he's had all year. It harkened back to Lewis in a lot of ways at Qatar, where he had a launch and then try to, make it work. And of course, that didn't work out very well either. So it's just a bad situation. And I think in a lot of ways for Sergio Perez, he wanted this one badly. And I'm sure that George wanted this one badly to save him from the sombrero. But I mean, it's a racing incident. It's just a shame. I mean, they're making him a sacrificial lamb. But good luck to whoever's going to take over that second seat.
Someone say Lando Norris. Jonah, right, just very quickly, racing incident, yes or no?
Yeah, racing incident caused by someone.
That's good enough. I heard racing incident, yes. So that will do. Right, we have two more teams to talk about. I appreciate we haven't gone exactly in sort of race order per se this week, but that gets boring. And I like to make sure that people have somewhat interesting teams to talk about in every show. Whether that actually happens, that's a different question. So Phil, your beloved Mercedes, they had Hamilton with yet another podium. I believe that's 3 years on the bounce. He's been P2 at Mexico, and 2019 he obviously won. So once again, a very, very good result for him. Started P6, put in some great moves, made us mediums work on the red flag restart. Russell started P8, moved up to P6, held off a very resurgent and charging down Ricciardo with tyres that were obviously way past their sell-by date, because on that last lap we saw him squirming through that stadium section, and yeah. So obviously I'm not a Mercedes fan, but I do certainly have to doff my cap to how well they've been this season. And you could say that they're regular podium sitters by this point, because they were on the podium last week. Obviously, there was then the technical infringement afterwards, but Hamilton's been on the podium. He's becoming a regular prediction of mine for a podium. Russell's not too far behind him. So once again, do you think this was the best they could have got this Sunday? Do you think there was a chance that Hamilton could have maybe got Max at the red flag restart? Do you think he's maybe a bit too cautious into turn one? Do you think there's perhaps a bit of a missed opportunity there?
I think the opportunity was better last week at Coda, to be perfectly honest. I don't believe there was at any pace. The Mercedes was so far behind earlier in the weekend, and it seemed like they were on divergent paths and neither of them were working. The qualifying pace was meh, but they were able to get into Q3 and give themselves a chance. And then what happened, all the argy-bargy that went on, opened up a opportunity, especially for Lewis. Ferrari also helped them in that sense. So in the end, you see what the gap was. There was never any doubt. But getting a second place on the road will actually keep it this time. It'll be nice. It's unfortunate he couldn't keep that second place from last week, because second in the world championship definitely is out the door now, I think. But maybe, but especially because Checo went into the night sky. But for Lewis and for this team, that's the momentum they need to be looking at getting into 2024. They've spent 3 years essentially kind of being on the back foot. It's about time that they start actually bringing a piece that their drivers can compete with, and you give a multiple world champion and one of the greatest ever a chance to compete, and one of the young talents that are out there. So, George definitely had to hold off a lot of guys, holding off Ricardo and not, sending himself, or Lando and letting him, eventually getting past, but not sending himself in the process. We'll give him props for that. But yeah, best case scenario, I think that's where Mercedes is going to be with McLaren, with Ferrari. It's take your pick from week to week. Who is that team going to be? And at least this week, Mercedes and Lewis were that team. So we'll look at Brazil. Last year at Brazil was a brief respite, and actually, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
No, of course. And obviously Brazil last year, George's first win and his first Grand Prix win. So he'll obviously be hoping to repeat that next week. But alas, this is not the preview show. So thank you for your thoughts around Mercedes. You always speak very passionately, Phil. Full credit to you. It's I slightly disagree with you in the sense that I think they had more race pace. I think Hamilton was just being sensible because he was just saving a bit of energy, saving a bit of tires. He took the fastest lap on the last lap. But maybe I'm being a little bit more sort of like on the fence about it. I'm not sure. But speaking of teams to make you go really, Jonah, Ferrari. Last thing we're going to talk about today, and we just got one or two other little bits to talk about. So they had a front row lockout, and they finished the race with a second row lockout. Absolute win, that one. They both got swallowed up into turn one. Obviously, Leclerc was involved in that in that first lap incident. There is currently an investigation for Leclerc. Over he was alleged to be driving the car in an unsafe condition. Now, I've just checked the FIA website. We haven't heard anything. That's a whole thing in itself as to why it was lap one, for heaven's sake. Why can't they investigate it during the race? But we'll do a podcast on that in the off season because we can call it the lives and times of the FIA. That's quite a good name actually. It's ultimately, they finished on the second row. They got beaten on pace by everyone got beaten on pace by Max. They got beaten on pace and strategy by Hamilton. And they weren't far off getting done in by Norris in the McLaren as well. So there's also another unfortunate record that Leclerc set, and I promise I'll let you speak in a second, where this is now the 11th pole in a row that he has set and failed to convert into a win. To put that into context, I believe Sergio Perez has more wins than he does in F1. Because Leclerc has 5 wins in F1. And bearing in mind, last year we said he was a title contender. We were kidding ourselves a bit, weren't we? And it's the same story with them. They were going to try a 1-stop anyway, as we heard. They obviously went with a 2-stop after the red flag, but once again, they finished 23 seconds off the back of Max.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's classic Ferrari at the end of the day. That's all it is. You lock out the front row. I mean, yeah, I understand in Mexico that pole and obviously second being the dirty side of the grid is not the best position to start at this track. It's actually third where Max happened to be, but it's classic Ferrari. I mean, you lock out the front row. I don't understand how even when Max comes into pit, how are you going to let the Red Bull undercut you? How are you going to let that happen? You see the Red Bull comes into pit. You can go ahead and you can bring in your guys next lap, or one of your guys, bring in Charles next lap and let Carlos go. But you're like, no, what are you doing? The Red Bull's going to undercut you. You're in a position here. Bring in the car, swap the tires, whether you go onto the hards. I think they would have, the hards would have been the only choice to go onto at that point. Why are you letting them undercut you? That makes no sense to me. They got 100% bailed out by the red flag at that point because everybody got a free change of tires. And they got a free change on Charles's wing, which, I don't really fully understand why they're investigating Charles. If he was driving in an unsafe condition, wave the black and orange flag. That's your call to make, not Ferrari's call to make. If they give him a penalty, I think that's ridiculous. But that's not out of the FIA's realm because they admitted they were wrong with what they did in giving Max a reprimand. And then they, didn't dish out any penalties for the exact same thing this weekend. So number one, I guess if you're a driver, stop at the end of the grid. It's or stop at the end of the pit lane. Totally fine. No one's going to get a penalty. It's all good. And if you're Ferrari, don't block off an undercut because you know what? It's okay. Makes no sense to me. It's classic Ferrari. Getting on the podium at that point is lucky. If there were more laps in the race, Lando would have caught in both of them. At the end of the day, though, Ferrari fans, enjoy your P3. That's great. He probably won't get disqualified from this one. Actually, we don't know that yet. But yeah, it's just classic Ferrari. I expect nothing less at this point. And you know what? They need. I don't think Fred Vasseur was enough restructuring to fix the issues they really have going on there.
No, it's going to take. It's less restructuring, more a complete rewire of that team. I think to put it. But yes, there's nothing on the Leclerc decision yet. I do just want to run some updates on some post-race penalties and summons, all the rest of it. So Bottas and Stroll have been summoned. Bottas for causing a collision at turn 15. I think that'll be a slam dunk 5 seconds. And then both the decisions, certainly one of them popped up at the end of the race, but both of them have popped up for Piastri and Yuki that there's no further action. So I just, so now that we've had that info about both of them being no further action, especially the second one where Yuki spun himself off, I'm going to come to each of you individually, and I just want, was it the right decision for it to be a racing incident? And was it the right decision for them to say, no further action? And do you feel it was a racing incident? I just want a quick yes and no from each of you. So Rachel, I'll go to you first. Was it a racing incident? And did the stewards make the right decision for both the incidents?
I can't answer in one word. I can't. I'll try to go really quick though, but I feel like the reason why they decided no further action was because they both kind of did it and they're like, that evens out. But I don't know. I kind of thought it was somebody's fault at some point. I didn't think it was a racing incident. And they got really lucky on the first one that what happened on the second time didn't happen the first time around. And then what was the second question I was supposed to answer?
The second question was, do you think it should have been a racing incident?
No. I can see it both ways. I don't know. I'll go yes. I'll say yes.
Okay, so Rachel's saying no on that one. And then Phil, very quickly, do you think the FIA made the right call on this one? And then, if so, do you agree or disagree that it should have been a racing incident?
Yeah, they have selective enforcement and are consistently inconsistent. So we'll just say that they were right for that one, because they just pull it out of their butt anyway. So it wouldn't be the FIA if it wasn't that way. So if it's a certain blue car, then they change the rules. If it's a black car, they change the rules. If it's a red car, they change the rules. So whatever clown show that they are.
Okay, I'll send that tinfoil hat in the post, Phil. Jonah, I'm only joking, mate. Jonah, very quickly, do you agree with the stewards' decision of no further action? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, do you think it was a racing incident?
No.
Okay, interesting. We are almost a little bit out of time. So first of all, everyone, thank you so much. I'll give you an opportunity to promote yourselves in a second. I have something I just want to add, though. And this is going to be one of those ones from the heart, so buckle in, everybody. I want to talk about the crowd quickly. Now, I've got a bone to pick with this, and this really, really irritates me. I get that Checo is I hope that people know that I'm talking about the crowd at the end of the race when Leclerc came on the podium after a racing incident at turn 1. Grow up. That's the first thing I'm going to say. If you think that Perez, was not to blame at all, or if you're trying to blame Leclerc for that incident, you need to grow up and you need to open your eyes. I get that he is the national driver of the team, and he's obviously got a fiercely loyal fan base, as a lot of other drivers do. You look at the support at Silverstone for the British drivers. You look at the Max fans in just quite a few of the European races. When we go to Australia, especially for Danny Rick, and hopefully more for Piastri in the years to come. To sit there in the crowd or stand in the crowd and boo a driver who did nothing wrong. The reason Perez DNF'd is because he just cut the angle too harsh at turn 1, and he paid the ultimate price. We've talked about it already, and I do agree that it was a racing incident. But that does not give you, the crowd, the right to boo someone who has done nothing wrong. And in an age where social media is so prevalent, we saw it in F1 a couple of years ago with the incidents, in the aftermath of Abu Dhabi 2021. We've seen it with other high-profile incidents in other sports. Another good example: the referee from the Rugby World Cup final yesterday, Wayne Barnes, has received death threats. Grow up. If you think it's okay to boo, to jeer, and I'm not talking about just like a little ooh boo hiss, full on making noises with it sounded like the Amazon rainforest. You need to grow up, because there's not a place for you in this sport or any sport, because that's not fair and that's not okay, and you don't understand the impact that might have on drivers. And I'm sorry to sort of perhaps somewhat end this on a little bit of a somber note, but something has to be said, because otherwise people just go, oh, look at that, funny little fans who are doing all this. No, it's not okay. So I wanted to mention that. I'm not going to go round the room on that one. That one is from me personally, and I know as a host, I'm supposed to remain impartial. I mean, I've been a bit unhinged tonight anyway, but I wanted to get that one off my chest. So, with that being said, let's give all of you a quick chance to promote yourselves. So, Rachel, I said you're from the Paddock Pals podcast. We quite often have your cousin Warren on the show. Tell us a bit about it, where we can find you, what you do.
Yeah, so we're a podcast, obviously, and my cousin is really good at the social media stuff, me not so much. So definitely check us out on the socials. I think we're just Paddock Pals Podcast. And then you can also listen to us on any podcast network. We do a Taylor Swift, I forgot that you existed segment, talk about celebrities and girlfriends at the race. So it's just two family members having a good old time.
Lovely stuff. Phil, I mentioned you are. I mean, you are one of the regulars here anyway. Especially on these later shows, which one of the few that are in your time zone. You're from the Grip Strip podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Grip Strip podcast. You've been on the show before. We talk about all things motorsports. I like to say, if it goes fast, we talk about it on the Grip Strip podcast. Talk about Formula One, albeit briefly, for my heart and for my mind. But we also talk about IndyCar, NASCAR, you name it, drag racing. So we talk about all things motorsports. You can find us basically anywhere where podcasts are distributed. We also have a YouTube page at Grip Strip Podcast, and you can find our show on my blog site at philipgmathew.com. And thanks as always. Great work, Tom. You're no matter what, you're always funny, and you always keep everyone on their toes, including the guests. So you got to give credit for that, even at this late hour for you. And always great to be on with Rachel and Jonah and be a part of the Grid Talk crew, and Aiden as well, for behind the scenes and all of his great work.
Absolutely, Aiden, Mr. Producer Extraordinaire behind the scenes. And thank you, Phil. That was very, very nice of you to say that. I mean, yes, saying I keep you on your toes, that's one way of phrasing it. I keep myself on my own toes. So, Jonah, just tell us a little bit about you. You are rather competitive in the esports scene, and you are, I believe, a multi-wheel champion as well. Am I right in saying that?
I like to say that. 3 times over, which has been a lot of fun racing in esports and with a bunch of Europeans. But 3-time over world champion with a few different teams, which was a lot of fun. Former host of the Soft Tire podcast. You can still find that basically everywhere. A podcast where 3 friends talk about Formula One for about 10 minutes, and then anything else for about 50. We don't do it anymore because they moved across the country and the time zones didn't work anymore. But it's still all over Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can find it like that. And if you want to watch league racing, Lightspeed Racing starts their season on Saturday. So catch me in one of the Haas cars with a good friend of mine.
Thank you for that. It's always nice to have something promo that isn't, in the nicest way possible. It's nice to have something promo that's not directly F1 or directly motorsport. With that being said, please do listen to our sister show Formula Talk, which is not F1, but that is indeed motorsport. So Sophia Richmond, who's a panelist here, she and I do that, where we look through F2, F3, F1 Academy, which is just finished. Obviously, we've got F2 with its finale in Abu Dhabi in just under a month's time now. So yeah, so please do check that out. That's my promo. I have personal socials as well. So if you want to find me, I'm at I'm not even going to say it because I'm just going to snigger. Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment. Also, make sure you subscribe so you are the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back fairly soon, probably tomorrow, to be honest, with plenty more from content. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye. You disembodied voice. And we have transitioned into a post show. Nice. So we have a couple of comments. So obviously, Ruby, the heist extraordinaire, was I still can't believe I said that. I don't know how on earth that happened. You can all come off of me now, by the way. I don't know how on earth that happened. I don't know how on earth that got into my head. Jared Bradley said, driver of the day, I think it has to be Norris, but also tip of the hat to Danny Rick. I mean, yeah, that's fair. I was considering Piastri as well, but I think you've got to say Norris, based on how many positions he made, but also Danny Rick, what he did in that car. So I don't know if anybody's got any differing thoughts on that.
No, I voted for Lando.
I also voted for Lando.
Yeah, we had a clean sweep on that one.
Yes, and I should have mentioned, but I didn't, that Lando was the Good Talk driver of the day. So I think about 7 of us had voted for it in Slack. So that's good. Jared, he was busy. Yeah, he just said Aston Martin RIP. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've basically done an Uno reverse card with McLaren by this point, I think.
Literally, it's like
Yeah.
one of those graphs that goes like this.
Yeah. It's just, it's like if they put a picture of the McLaren from the start of the season and Aston Martin from today, and it said Corporate wants you to find the difference between these two pictures, it'd be like they're the same thing. So yeah. Oh god, I got some professional training. Not looking forward. Jared said it's like they're tanking their season to get more time next year. I believe talking about McLaren. Sorry, no, definitely not McLaren. Talking about Aston Martin. Not sure about that. I think they just hit a development wall, and they came firing out the blocks, and rightly so. We were hyping them up, but they kind of ran out of steam, sort of like in about the second third of the season, and now they're just barely keeping their head above water.
And they only have one driver that can actually help develop the car, and the other one's just a Nepo baby.
She did it.
There is that, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That's brilliant.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, yeah. I've run out of things. I've given up having to go with Lance Stroll because he's just. Jared said Logan Sargent is an awesome man. Yeah, he's not doing great, is he? Let's be fair.
This for being an American Formula One fan, and for what I thought he was going to bring to the table, the way that I mean, I know Alexander Albon has been rated over the years, and he got sent through the toilet in the cesspool, but he has comprehensively, ran circles, lapped this, that, whatever saying you want to use around Logan. And I mean, James Vowles can say, and you brought it up, Rachel, that he's like, he has to hit these metrics. I'm like, what is the metric? Not hit anything? I mean, that's literally the metric that he's going to hit. Who the heck are they going to put in the car? I'm Franco Colapinto, who?
No, he's not old enough, Phil.
Insert some other guy or woman. Why don't we just? What are you going to do? I mean, he's holding water. I mean, I think at the end of the day, he might get another year, but
he doesn't deliver.
He doesn't qualify well. He's like absolutely abysmal in qualifying. And I don't get it. You're 20 races into the season. You'd think you'd get the mechanism of qualifying by now. And this is at the fact that, I mean, maybe they're not running the same spec. Okay, fine. But for bleep's sake, I mean, at least get to Q2. Yeah, there you go. At least get to Q2. He's able to race. The one thing is he's able to make positions, but then once they pit, he drops to the bottom of the race, and then usually he has this slow plodding move forward like a tortoise, and then he backdoors points like he did last week, and yeah, you like that. But that's it. It's so disappointing. But then when you consider this recent run of American drivers in Formula One. We look at Scott Speed's failed, experiment, which I mean is Red Bull. So I'm not going to go off on a tangent. And then before that, it was Michael Andretti and his ego, plus the fact that he was at McLaren with Ayrton Senna. So that was just a match made in never. And then Eddie Cheever, which, I mean, it's Eddie Cheever. He's a tool. So, and he's not really American. He's Italian, but
Is he Italian American? Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was born in America and whatever. And because Antonucci, I think, is like there's a IndyCar driver. I think it was a nephew, Richard Antonucci, back years ago. So that's like his cousin or whatever. So yeah, he's an Italian. So he's like Jean Alesi acting like he's French. And then he became Italian because he wanted to drive a Ferrari, and then napalmed his whole entire career.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more from Phil, you know where to find him. Fair play, Phil. Just one last one. Jared said, well, 17th to 10th, 10th to 15th, and up to 5th. He said that was great driving, great strategy for McLaren today. Very impressive. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
best drive of his career, I think, honestly, or one of, if not one of the top three. I mean,
yeah. Jared. So great. He said, "Great hustle on the bleep machine." I've got it arrived yesterday. I've got a lap bulb mixer with this new microphone, so I can just go, "You absolute," and then just insert whatever you like, and it means we can keep our monetization. So, Jared, thank you for joining in the chat. Always lovely to see you. Your name is very, very regular. We're going to bring it to a close now because it is 25 to midnight here. I have work in the morning. I don't do this full time as much as I would love to. I mean, I'm still amazed that people listen to this and tune in every week. So everyone here, everyone listening, everyone watching, thank you so much. Aidan, as always, the man who goes unnoticed, who goes unseen, unspoken. Nobody actually knows what he looks like. He's just this entity which sits in the back of a Zoom call and tells us all what to do. So, yes, thank you so much. And we will see you probably tomorrow for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Thank you, everybody. Nostar, das war's for good night.